Okay, welcome back everyone. So on today's show, we're going to get started on a large project of replacing this laminate floor. So that's the kitchen area there, and it comes all the way back to the entranceway here to the dining room and down the front hallway to the front door. So because it's all one area that's all attached, we're going to do the whole thing in a ceramic tile. I've done ceramic tile on walls before, but never on a floor, so this will be my first time on the floor. So we'll video it as we go along and try and keep you up to date on how the project goes. So for today, we've got a cabinet over there that's on top of the existing floor. We're going to take that out, take all the baseboard trims off, and then we're going to start pulling this laminate floor out, see what we have for subfloor underneath. So that's step one for our project, just see what we got to work with underneath of this. Here. So we've got all the laminate flooring out, and we found, which I didn't expect, we found vinyl flooring underneath the laminate, and the vinyl flooring was glued down. And then they had a 1/4 inch plywood underneath that. So we pulled the vinyl up, and it's separated from the backing. So the gray color that you see on the floor here is the backing material off of the vinyl flooring. So I went around with a scraper, and there was a lot of loose material just around the edge or the perimeter. You can see there's a piece here that we scraped off, and there's glue. But I decided that it's going to affect the bond, or I think it would. If you put thin set down to try and put a cement backer board down, the moisture in that thin set is going to lift this paper, potentially. So you're not going to have the bond you want with the backer board. So we've decided to tear this up, this 1/4 inch, which now that I've gotten into it, I think was the right move to do. It takes us back to the original plywood floor, and it's only 5/8 of an inch thick. So by taking up this 1/4 inch and getting all the other garbage out, we've got a clean slate to start with, back to original. We'll add 1/2 inch plywood over top of this plywood. And then when we've got that secured, we've got our squeaks and everything out of our floor, we'll check for high spots, low spots, do what we may have to do some leveling. Then we'll come back with our cement backer board and our thin set, put that down. So that'll be ready for our tiling. Now time-wise, it's been a lot of work. We've got, I'll stand back a bit. So from the dining room, the edge of the carpet there, so we've got what you can see going across the kitchen there pulled up, and the front hallway is all pulled up. And of course it was stapled down, and the staples were just pulling through it, so there was hours and hours worth of pulling staples. Can't see it right now, but this area in here, you might be able to see some of the screw hole marks. They had a massive amount of screws in here. There is some squeaks in this area that they must have been trying to pull out. Didn't work. I think they had too short of screws. They're only 1.25 inches, and most of them are doing nothing. They're just through a 5/8 piece of plywood. They don't go into the studs or anything like that. So whatever they were trying to do, they did not accomplish it. So we will put some screws back in to try and get rid of the squeaks, but we'll try and do it better than they did. Now the cabinet that I showed you on the first video that ran up the wall there, and there's a bulkhead above it. We'll stand back again. The wife thinks the kitchen looks better. It opens it up more, and I have to agree with that. Out of there, I think it does open it up more. So she doesn't want it put back in. So we're going to have to also now tear out that bulkhead, patch up the ceiling and the wall, fill in the screw holes where it was screwed into one of the studs there to hold it up. And then we'll have to figure out where else we can put that cabinet. Things are out of place a little bit over here on this side right now because we've been moving the fridge and stuff to rip the floor up. But there is a possibility that we may be able to relocate that cabinet over to this side. We have enough length in the wall here to do that. I just not sure how it'll look in beside the refrigerator yet, but that's an option that we can do anyhow. So we've got 5 hours invested into the floor so far to get up the plywood, the staples and the screws from the area that you can see done. So it is a little bit of time-consuming work. Pulling all the staples was the worst part, or the most time-consuming part. Ripping the plywood up itself is not a big deal. It doesn't take very long to rip that stuff up. So we'll keep at it, and we'll see how it progresses. We're just going to take this down to the front of those cupboards and cut along in front of them for now. We will have to take the cupboards out because it does extend underneath them all the way to the wall. And I want to keep everything a consistent height. And I want to have it so that the tiles are in the hole there for the dishwasher and under the stove, things like that. So everything maintains a nice height. But we're going to wait. This is just some preparation work to get us close to that point. And then next weekend I got some vacation time starting, and that's when we're going to really get at this, get the countertops out of the way, and we'll finish taking out the plywood and stuff that's under them, clean that up, and then we'll be able to start relaying new materials. So that's where there you can see our lovely staples that we have to pull. Now it's getting better. They're only around the perimeter of the sheets now. There might be the odd one that's in the center of the sheet, but most of them are just around the edges of them. When we first started out in the hallway and the closets, they just seem to be everywhere. But you can see how easy the plywood itself comes up. So all the time-consuming parts of this is just in pulling all of these staples. But we'll rolling. Okay, so we've been just plugging away a little bit each night, taking up some of this flooring that you had seen that had the gray backing on it. So we're down to the 5/8 plywood for pretty much everything except for what's underneath the cabinets up there now. So everything back that far has been lifted up, all the staples been pulled, screws if they've been in there sticking up, all of that stuff's done. So we're back down to the original 5/8 plywood there. Today was Saturday, so the beginning of the holidays. So we have some time to tackle this a lot stronger now. So today was a run to Home Depot to start picking up the plywood, the cement backer board, all the flooring screws, thin sets, all that kind of stuff. So we got that all picked up, brought that back today. And then that bulkhead piece that we had talked about before having to come out, I went up into the attic and pulled the insulation back out of the way. And then we tore that bulkhead box off that was there above that cabinet. And I've just got some little bit of drywall scraps that I picked up today at Home Depot too. We got those in, got the first coat of mud on with some tape on the joints. So that'll be enough for today. We'll let that set up overnight. We'll do another coat on that tomorrow, and while it's setting up, I think we'll start taking out those kitchen cabinets and getting the rest of the flooring out from underneath them. And then it'll be new stuff starting to put back down. Well, the cabinets are coming out. we had some issues. The countertop was wall to wall from that end to that end. So there wasn't a whole lot of room to try and maneuver it. We slid it towards where I'm standing off of that countertop till we were clear, and we were able to swing it or pivot it downward so it was standing straight up, and then we could turn it on an angle and get it out of there. Our next problem we've come across, this last cabinet, the plumbing, originally they had drilled the holes straight through the bottom of this cabinet and set this cabinet down over top of those two water pipes. It's not going to come out the same way. If I cut the water pipes off somewheres in here to give me enough room to solder a coupler in later, I'm still not going to be able to lift this cabinet up high enough off of this cutoff piece, because this piece of wood over here is going to come up and hit the bottom of this drain pipe. So I've got maybe 1 inch of height that I can lift this, but I would like to have more than 1 inch of pipe here when it comes time to resolder. So instead, I think I'm going to use a reciprocating saw and just try and cut across this, cut a piece out on both of these pipes. The back piece, I'm not too worried about it. If I have to break it, it's only 1/4 inch thick. I'm sure we could replace that later somehow. And then we'll just slide the cabinet forward away from those pipes. So that's what we're going to try and do. All right, we got the cabinet freed up. A little messier than I wanted it to be. That was the general idea, was to cut the 2 slots just to slide this straight forward. But like I said, it got a little bit messier. So they had a back piece on here that was fairly thick, so I had to cut through that also. And then this 1/4 inch stuff they had, it started to break up. So later on, after we reinstall, we'll slide a new backer board in here behind the pipes, and we'll attach that. And then the bottom, I don't know, maybe we'll just get something that's half decent looking and slide a whole new sheet in around the bottom or something to help cover some of this up. So we'll decide later on after we reinstall what we're going to do to fix this up, but we will fix it. So that's our last cabinet that was in here. Water pipe there coming up out of the floors for the dishwasher and the hydro for it. So we'll take up this vinyl flooring and the plywood and stuff that's underneath it. That's where the stove was sitting, was here. So we'll get this up and pull the rest of the staples out of this area. And I think we're going to be ready to start putting some new plywood down. Okay, well, as you can see, our new floor has been going down, at least the plywood subfloor. So from the back wall, it's done all the way from side to side. And we've come all the way up. We're up to the staircase now. So that much of it's finished. So we're coming to the last piece. So this is not a full 8-foot piece in here over to the dining room. And I got the tape measure laying on the floor, because if I come off of that end where the dog was laying there on that end of that piece, 8 feet is going to put me just inside of this floor joist here. And I'm only going to have from there to the wall, there's only 1 floor joist running along here. And this is going to be a high traffic area in the hallway. So I think there's a lot of movement, or could be a lot of movement on the edge of a sheet here with no real sub support underneath. So I'm going to turn and start from the wall, and I'm actually going to run back and cut the sheet off at 7 feet. And that will give me, so if I cut it off here at 7 feet, then I have a floor joist here, a floor joist here, and a floor joist here. Even though this is right in front of the door from the garage, it's going to be supported from underneath by at least 3 floor joists. So I think there's a lot less chance of movement or squeaks down the road or anything like that, having that supported by that much sub work or whatever you want to say underneath, as opposed to over there only having 1 floor joist under that piece in a hallway. And cutting it off at 7 feet is not going to matter, because we're now moving into the area of the hallway that the maximum width, even into the back of the closet, to this wall is only 6.5 feet. So I think we're going to be good. We're not going to have any joints that's, you know, going to all of a sudden line up, and we don't want them to line up, things like that. So we're just going to change direction here and continue on finishing getting down this new plywood, in the hallway, and then we're going to start checking things for high spots, low spots, and start dealing with those. Okay, so we've got the remaining portion of our plywood now is all installed. Everything's done. Everything worked out good the way we were talking about the measurements here. So we started off the wall with a sheet, cut it at 7 foot, which brought us up to here. And then we had a good sized piece to put in there in front of the door that was able to catch 3 of the floor studs from underneath, so it's got lots of support to it. So the high and the low spots was the next thing to deal with. So we went around at a 4 foot level that I was using just to see if it would rock anywhere on the floor or have any gaps under it to indicate any low spots. And then I marked them off as I was finding them. So high spots I marked with an X, low spots I marked with a circle. And the only thing I had to try and deal with the high spots was a sander, just a round orbital sander. A 3-inch belt sander. I wish I had it would have chewed the wood down a heck of a lot faster. But I think we did okay with our handheld orbital sander. So we had a little difficult to see down here, a little bit of a lighter area of the wood there where I sanded it down a bit. I made sure the screw heads were sunk down in 1/16 of an inch or so I wasn't hitting them to tear up my sandpaper. You can see more spots down there that are lighter in color. There's one there across the end of that 4x8 sheet there just inside that seam. Right in front of the refrigerator was a really bad spot, and there was another spot right there, not a very big spot, just in here. And I think some of these sheets of plywood right from the manufacturer have bubbles or something in them. And I'll show you. You can see that V in the wood right there. Now that is sunk in quite deep, and there was actually pieces of wood, there's still some in there, that were stuck along here, and they were, I don't know, not glued, but I took a scraper to them and I was able to pick off most of it except that little piece that's still stuck in there. So it's something from the manufacturer where there's, you know, a sliver of wood that's gotten laminated in with this sheet or something as they're making the plywood up with its layers. Now imagine if a piece like that got in between a layer inside the plywood. When they put this through a press and press these layers together, it's going to end up creating a little bump, I think, in the plywood. And I think that's what happened down there in front of the back door, because everything was flat except one spot for about 10 inches long had a real bubble in the plywood there. So we sanded that off, and the level sits nice and flat on it now, so I think that turned out okay. And I've got a couple of circles just with a pen drawn on the floor here. This is the biggest area I have that is a low spot is right in here. And because it's next to the high spot here that I had to sand down, they're both kind of working against each other to make one, you know, look more pronounced than it really is. But it is going to take a fair bit of thin set in this area here to build that up before I put the cement backer board down. There was another small low spot. Can't really see my circle in the, oh yeah, there it is. Just a small spot right inside of this back door here. Yeah, I think that's all I've got for low spots is those two spots there to fill. And the rest of it's nice and level. So the other thing I got to think about now is we still want to somehow keep this as a half functioning area while I'm working, because we've got that door that goes out to the garage, that door goes outside out to the backyard, and then there's the front door, of course, there. Those are the only exit points we have to the house. So I can't do all of this at once, or we're not going to be able to get in and out of the house. So because we've got the cabinets all tore out, we don't have a functioning kitchen right now anyhow. So I'm thinking maybe of starting working off this back wall, coming forward. The sheets are 3 feet wide, and I want to lay them so 3 foot from the wall, out this way 3 feet. I could come out 6 feet, and that would give me enough to be able to put the counters back in, probably keep the stove working. There's enough room to move it over and still have it plugged in while I'm doing that. So I might do that. Put the cement backer board down in that area. Well, I've got the thin set out for the cement backer board. Use it to fill in these low spots that I need to. Let all that set up overnight. And then I can come back and decide whether I'm just going to tile that, get it done, grout it, the whole thing, get the cabinets back in and have the kitchen functioning again while I work on the rest of the floor, or, you know, or which way we end up handling it. But I got to give some thought into this so that we can still get in and out of the house and still maintain some functionality in the kitchen as far as using the refrigerator and the stove and things like that. So we'll see what we can come up with. Been a bit of a slower day today, working on this kitchen floor. Had some errands I had to run this morning. I had to get the grass cut this morning, things like that. And I was struggling a bit looking at this kitchen floor area, trying to figure out how to split it up so we could still use doors to get in and out of the house, have an area we could walk on, and an area obviously that just freshly laid board that we can't walk on. So, and it was very time consuming. You know, you lay a couple boards, then you got to stop and you got to cut one. So I decided to just lay them all down, do all my measurements, all my cutting, lay out the entire floor, and then I can come back and just lift up a row at a time, mix up my thin set, and put the row back down. Then I can go as far as I can, and when I'm done, I'm done. So what I wanted to show you here was cutting some of this stuff. I didn't buy any fancy saw blades for cutting cement or anything, because I didn't really have a whole lot of cutting to do other than the straight cuts. And for that, I bought one of their scoring knives that I have misplaced. They've got carbide tips on them just for scoring, similar to what you would do with drywall with a drywall knife. Score it, snap the board, cut through the fiber material that they have on the other side, and away you go. For holes, this is for a heat register vent that I have to cut into this one. And as I said, I didn't buy any saw blades, so all I'm using is a wood blade in jigsaw. It's a fairly aggressive blade. It's got large teeth on it, but no, I'm not drilling any pilot holes or anything to get started. But I'll show you that even though it's just a wood blade, it cuts through this stuff without any problems. I'm not drilling any starter holes or anything. I will turn the volume down so you don't need to worry about it on your video when you're watching. And it's not, it is dulling the teeth a little bit on that blade, but not as much as I had expected. I thought when I first started doing this that it would just chew the tooth right off of this thing, but it's cut. It's done a few cuts now. This is the second one of these heat register vents that I've done, and a couple of other small cuts around things. And it's just starting to wear those teeth down now. So for the amount of cuts I have left to do yet, I'll probably go through this blade and one more yet. Okay, so we've got all of our cement backer board laid out now. So we'll be able to pick out a pattern of what boards we can glue down and stay off of, and still have an area that we can walk on to get around, get to the fridge, get to the back door, stuff like that, in and, you know, upstairs, into the TV room, things like that. So we've marked out a pattern that's going to allow us to do that. So we'll start on that tomorrow. I don't know how many of these I'll get down tomorrow, but we'll find that out and then we'll come back. Well, welcome back this morning, everyone. So we left off last night showing you that I had the cement backer board laid out. So we marked out a pattern of how we were going to cement down certain boards and leave some not cemented down so we could walk around in there and whatnot. Mixing the actual thin set. There's nothing on the bags that give you any sort of indication where to start, so I had to go online. I went to the company that makes the VersaBond product, And basically a good starting point is 4 to 1. 4 parts material to 1 part water. So that's a starting point, and then from there you can adjust more water, more material, whatever you need to get the right consistency. Temperature and humidity, all that kind of stuff factored in. It's going to make a difference on your area, so it's not going to be exact what I do. I had already dumped the bag into this pail that I had been working from. And I got a dry pail that I'm putting it in. Hang on, I forgot my mask. You don't want to breathe this stuff in for sure. So this container is a 1 liter or 1 quart container that I'm using. Yeah, that should be about 4 quarts. And a quart of water. This is a 1/2-inch chuck drill. I bought this mixing paddle at Home Depot also. This is maximum 2800 RPM drill, and it takes everything this drill can do to mix this stuff, so some power would help. So the consistency they tell you want is like a pasty consistency. So I think that's very good what we have there. If I can find something just to show you. So that's what we have. So it's a little bit kind of like toothpaste, I guess. So while we have the right consistency that we want there, volume-wise I want more than that. So I'm just going to keep adding to it. As I said, I stuck down a couple of rows of that cement backer board already. So I have an idea of how much I want to put down, 3 or 4 sheets at a time. So we do want a little bit more.